As Arisu opened the door, she found Izayoi standing there with a playful smirk on his face. Had fun, he quipped, teasing her about whatever activities she had been up to. Arisu didn't answer him, simply walking past him and heading towards her own dorm. She didn't feel like engaging in his teasing banter at the moment. However, Izayoi was persistent. "Erida, I need to talk to you," he called out in a playful yet insistent tone, as if he was getting himself into trouble. Erida, who had been in his dorm, emerged at the sound of Izayoi's voice. He raised an eyebrow at his friend's tone but followed him outside nonetheless. Izayoi stepped inside the dimly lit room, the door creaking softly behind him. He waited for Erida to catch up and follow him inside, taking a seat on one of the plush armchairs. Erida sat down opposite him, stretching out his legs on the low table between them. "As I stated, we need to talk," Izayoi began, his voice low and serious. "Simply put, we need to address our weak links if we are going to succeed in the class challenges." Erida nodded slowly, his expression resigned. "Yeah, I figured that's what this was about. So who's the target this time?" Izayoi leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "It's not about targeting anyone. It's about acknowledging our weaknesses and figuring out how to overcome them. We can't rely on our usual tactics if we want to win against tougher opponents." Erida shook his head, a hint of frustration in his voice. I know. But we've been through this before. We're already the strongest team in the class. Why bother with all this?" Izayoi's eyes narrowed, a hint of impatience creeping into his voice. "Because we can't afford to be complacent. We need to keep pushing ourselves to get better, to be the best. That's the only way we'll be able to face the challenges that lie ahead." Erida sighed heavily, getting up from his chair and walking over to the small fridge in the corner of the room. He grabbed 2 glasses and filled them with ice-cold juice, placing one in front of Izayoi and taking a sip from the other. "Fine, I get it," he said, his tone resigned. "So who's the weakest link, then?" Izayoi leaned back in his chair, taking a sip from his glass. "It's not about individuals. It's about identifying our collective weaknesses and figuring out how to overcome them. We need to train harder, work smarter, and be more strategic if we want to come out on top." Erida nodded, his expression thoughtful. "All right, I'm with you. So what's the plan?" Izayoi smiled faintly, a glint of determination in his eyes. "The plan is simple. We keep training, keep pushing ourselves, and keep looking for ways to improve. And when the time comes, we'll be ready to take on whatever challenges come our way." Izayoi stood tall, raising his finger in the air with a determined look in his eyes. "I can't reveal everything just yet," he spoke slowly, "but I need to make sure that when the time comes, you're on my side." Erida chuckled skeptically, crossing his arms over his chest. "What's in it for me?" he asked bluntly. "Let's be real here, my guy. You're not exactly the most attractive girl in the world." Izayoi's expression remained unwavering as he replied, "I will offer you whatever you want. And I won't break your face." Erida rolled his eyes. "I've heard that same offer before," he said dismissively. "I'm not sure I trust you." Izayoi's face turned stern. "You better start thinking about it," he warned, his voice low and threatening. "Or you'll end up on the chopping block, and I won't hesitate to do what needs to be done." Erida paused for a moment, considering his options. Finally, he shrugged. "Whatever, sure, I don't really care," he said with a nonchalant tone. Izayoi stood up from his seat, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. "Glad we could come to an understanding," he said coolly as he walked out of the room. Take care. Sora and Shiro sat in their dorm room, the silence thick between them as they both contemplated their situation. Sora knew that something was wrong when he woke up that morning, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. And now, with Shiro unable to remember anything about their lives before coming to this school, he was starting to worry. Shiro looked up at Sora with a pained expression on her face. "I don't remember anything," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't remember our parents, or where we used to live, or anything." Sora's heart sank as he listened to his sister's words. He had always relied on Shiro to remember things for him, as his own memory was not the best. But now, with both of them in the dark, he didn't know what to do. "We'll figure it out," he said finally, trying to sound confident even though he didn't feel it. "We'll start by looking through our stuff, maybe we'll find something that will jog our memories." Shiro nodded, a small spark of hope in her eyes. Together, they started going through their belongings, searching for anything that might give them a clue. As they dug through old textbooks, clothes, and trinkets, Sora couldn't help but feel a sense of unease growing inside him. What if they never figured out what had happened to them? What if they were stuck in this school forever, with no memories of their past? But then, as he was about to give up hope, he saw something out of the corner of his eye. It was a small notebook, tucked away in the back of his drawer. He picked it up and opened it, his heart racing as he scanned the pages. And then, all at once, it came flooding back to him. The games, the challenges, the victories. Sora and Shiro were not just ordinary siblings, they were the undefeated gaming duo, known as Blank, who had conquered every game they had ever played. Sora turned to Shiro, a grin spreading across his face. "I remember everything," he said, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. "We're going to be just fine." Sora watched Shiro's expression carefully, knowing that she was already anxious and worried about their situation. But he couldn't bear to burden her with the truth. So he smirked and spoke, "I was just messing with you, Shiro. Of course, I remember why we're here." Shiro looked up from her phone, clearly not convinced. But she smiled anyway, grateful for her brother's attempt to ease her worries. Deep down, she knew he was lying, but she appreciated his effort to make things better. Sora continued, "We're here to conquer the school and become the best gamers in the world. That's our mission, remember?" Shiro nodded, her smile growing wider. "Yeah, that's right. We're going to win every game and become unbeatable." She paused for a moment before adding, "But, Sora, do you really remember everything?" Sora's smile faltered for a split second, but he quickly recovered. "Of course I do, Shiro. Don't worry about it." Shiro looked at her brother for a few more moments, then nodded again. "Okay, I trust you." Sora let out a sigh of relief, glad that his plan had worked. He didn't want Shiro to worry any more than she already was. They had a mission to accomplish, and he was determined to see it through. Sora continued on with his charade, pretending that everything was all right and that they were just regular students attending a school for fun. Shiro played along, knowing that her brother had a reason for keeping their true purpose a secret. As they sat in their dorm room, the silence was broken by Sora's stomach growling. He laughed it off, trying to hide his embarrassment. Shiro, being the ever-prepared one, pulled out a bag of snacks from under her bed. "I knew you'd be hungry, Sora," she said with a smile. Sora grinned in appreciation as he reached for a snack. As they munched on their treats, the siblings relaxed for a moment, enjoying each other's company. But in the back of their minds, they both knew that their real reason for being at this school was much more serious than just having fun. They were here for a purpose, and they couldn't afford to let their guard down. As they finished their snacks, Sora turned to Shiro with a serious expression. "We need to start planning, Shiro. We can't let our guard down for a second." Shiro nodded in agreement, her mind already racing with ideas. They would need to be careful, but they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead.